In early 2026, naval blockades paralyzed the Strait of Hormuz, effectively trapping 20% of the world's daily oil supply behind a wall of warships. Nations reliant on those Gulf exports felt the squeeze instantly. In Hanoi, queues at petrol stations stretched for blocks as panic buying and fuel shortages paralyzed daily transit. The supply shock quickly evolved into political pressure. Across Ireland, protesters flooded major road networks to demand relief from the surging cost of living. In the United States, the impact arrived at the pump. Retail gas prices pushed past $4 and in some states $5 a gallon, threatening industries from logistics to aviation. But here's the contradiction. This map shows that the U.S. receives 57% of its imports from Canada and has zero connection to Iranian oil. Simultaneously, American domestic production is hitting record highs. If America pumps its own crude and buys the rest from its immediate neighbors, why is a war 7,000 miles away draining American wallets? Explaining that price spike requires a look at how oil is actually valued. There isn't a single price of oil. It is split between two distinct benchmarks, West Texas Intermediate and North Sea Brent. West Texas Intermediate, or WTI, is the domestic standard. It represents landlocked crude, pumped from American fields and stored in massive tank farms in Oklahoma. Brent crude is the international standard. It represents waterborne oil that serves as the benchmark for roughly 2/3 of the world's internationally traded supply. When the 2026 war trapped seaborne tankers, Brent prices skyrocketed as countries in Asia and Europe began aggressively outbidding each other for whatever free supply was left on the water. This chart shows the Brent WTI spread. Historically, these two lines track together. But as the war began, the Brent line spiked, leaving this massive gap. Because domestic WTI is physically trapped in North American pipelines, it was initially insulated from that global panic. We are left with two different economic realities: a stable supply of domestic crude oil and a chaotic global market. Those two worlds collide once the oil is actually used. Data from the U.S. Energy Information Administration shows American retail gasoline prices track with the international price of Brent crude, rather than domestic WTI. Raw crude oil is essentially useless to a driver until a refinery processes it into usable, finished gasoline. Once refined, that gasoline is treated as a globally traded commodity. U.S. refiners operate globally. Even using cheap domestic crude, they route fuel to whichever country offers the highest price, shipping it to Europe and Asia. To keep that gasoline domestic, American drivers must match the high bids of international buyers. High domestic production cannot protect a nation from price shocks because the finished product is always sold to the highest international bidder. Governments attempted to stabilize the market through emergency measures, including the IEA's authorization to release 400 million barrels of oil from global strategic reserves. The U.S. Treasury even issued a 30-day waiver, temporarily allowing stranded, sanctioned Iranian oil to be sold, just to inject an extra 140 million barrels into the market. Those numbers sound massive, but they must be measured against global demand. The world burns over 105 million barrels every single day. When you run the math, that historic emergency release only covers 4 days of total global consumption. Strategic reserves and political waivers are temporary buffers. They cannot offset a sustained disruption at a major global choke point. The ultimate lesson of the 2026 crisis is that domestic production numbers are irrelevant when the end product is a global commodity. For any nation whose economy relies on fossil fuels, the promise of energy independence is a myth. As long as modern infrastructure requires oil, every local gas pump and every personal wallet remains permanently tethered to the world's most volatile conflicts.